What is up, everybody? It's 414 Anime here for Anime Uproar, and today we are going to be talking about how Ichigo could be the next Soul King. Ichigo is very unique in the fact that he is a hybrid of Shinigami, Hollow, and Quincy heritage, which may land him with not only the title of the next Soul King, but what comes with that title in its horrendous fate. We have made a load of Bleach videos on the channel now, including an hour-long video covering Ichigo's power, so make sure to check that video out after this one. Link to that is in the video description. Now, if you do enjoy these Bleach videos on the channel and you'd like to see more, you know what to do. Smash that like button, as it really does help us out with that YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. The Soul King, also known as the King of All Souls, is a central figure in the Bleach anime and manga series. The Soul King is said to be the source of all souls and the ruler of the Soul Society, the afterlife in which the Soul Reapers reside. The Soul King is also the guardian of balance in the universe, ensuring that the flow of souls between the living world and the Soul Society remain in balance. The Soul King is a complex and mysterious figure, and its true nature and purpose are shrouded in mystery. However, its role as the source of all souls and the guardian of balance in the universe make it a central and important figure in the series. Its history and the events surrounding it have had profound impact on the lives of many of the characters, and its fate has shaped the course of the series entirely. Now, the Soul King is first introduced to us in chapter 223, but we don't actually get to see a full glimpse of this intriguing being way up until chapter 519. Our first look at the Soul King is a very interesting one. It is just a silhouette of a fully humanoid looking figure that is encased within a yellow crystal. However, when we later see him, we can see that the Soul King is in fact a limbless and lifeless corpse trapped within that crystal that we had just mentioned. This raises the question, was the Soul King once intact, losing his limbs over time, or was Kubo just unsure on the Soul King's design at that specific time? Well, that question is answered. However, not in the manga, but instead in the Bleach light novel entitled Can't Fear Your Own World. The history of the Soul King is also shrouded in mystery, and little is known about its origins or its true purpose. Some people believe that the Soul King is a deity, while others see it as a powerful force of nature. However, in this light novel we find out more, not only about the Soul King and his importance in the Bleach universe, but also snippets of his history. Many years ago, before the current events in the story, the world of Bleach as we know it was completely different. In our current time, the world is made up of 3 different realms, that being the world of the living, the Soul Society, and Waco Mundo. These 3 realms are what the Soul King keeps in balance so that the world does not regress to what it once was. A world in which both life and death were one and the same. It was a world completely unstable and an absolute living chaos. Hollows eventually entered this world and started hunting down and eating the humans who inhabited it. In doing so, the Hollows upset the balance and the flow of souls, which eventually led to the birth of the first Menos. The world back then was a place in which everything existed together. The Hollows preyed on the humans, who had literally nowhere safe to live, and the souls of the dearly departed also had nowhere to go. It was utter mayhem and a true living hell. However, a powerful being would emerge from this chaos to fight for the humans. This man was so powerful that he could take down these Menos-classed Hollows with ease, turning them into reishi sand. This man would later become none other than the Soul King. Now, Ichigo, the leader of the Now Zero division, was also around at this time, and he actually remarked that there was nothing and no one in this world that was equal to the Soul King in terms of his raw power. Now, even though the Soul King was, in a sense, the savior of the humans, in defending them and seeing off the Hollows, he was actually continuing the destabilization of the balance within this world, as the Hollows he was destroying were being eradicated rather than purified. This means that the soul of that hollow would fade away from existence, thus upsetting the very fragile and unstable balance of this world. Now, to put an end to this unbalance and to finally restore stability, 5 powerful beings came together with a solution. These 5 individuals, who are actually the ancestors of the 5 great noble families, worked together to betray the Soul King. Each of these individuals, though sharing the same goal of bringing balance to the world, each had their own way of wanting to go about it, including its outcomes. They, however, came up with a conclusion that not only ticked off their main goal, but their individual ones too. What they wanted to do was to split the world up into 3 different realms that would bring about a much needed cycle of life and death, but in order to do that, they needed a power that the Soul King himself possessed called the Almighty. A power that, of course, would be passed down to his son, who was none other than Yuha-Ba. So not only did the Almighty have the power to see all futures and change them as he so, wished to, but he also had the power to split worlds, and this was the power that the 5 individuals wanted. They enlisted the help of none other than Ichigo to ambush the Soul King. Interestingly, it is said that he was met with no resistance from the Soul King, but the 5 nobles weren't about to take any chances here. Once captured, they removed all of his limbs, carved out his heart, and mutilated his internal organs before sealing him within the large yellow crystal, where he would remain trapped in a lifeless state for millions of years, where he was neither living nor dead. In doing so, they took the power of the Soul King for themselves and used it to create the 3 realms: the world of the living, the Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo. The Soul King is now held within the Royal Palace, which is guarded by an elite force known as the Zero Division, with none other than Ichigo, who is appointed this position not only as Squad Zero's leader, but the leader of the Shinigami by the ancestors of the 5 great noble families. The Zero Division, also known as the Royal Guard, are made up of 5 members who are tasked with the protection of the Soul King and its secret, the Soul Palace itself, and the Royal Family. The Zero Division are the strongest force there is. Made up of former Gotai 13 captains, their total power far surpassed that of the combined might of all the current 13 divisions altogether. One of the members, Oetsu Numaya, is actually the guy who created the Zanpakuto Toe, so there is an example of how impressive these members of the Zero Division are. Now, we learn in the Bleach Can't Fear Your Own World light novel that the Zero Division are all tied to the Soul King Palace due to the fact that their bones are all in fact Okins. The Okin is a special key that grants you access to the Soul King Palace, and it was the Soul King's own power that was used to modify the members' bones as Okins. Also, because their lives are tied to the Soul King Palace this way, it means that as long as any one of the division members are alive, they can revive any members that had died by simply calling out their names. Not only does the Okin act as passageway to the Soul King Palace and a form of revival, but it also grants the members of the Zero Division agelessness. Ichigo stated that he had been guarding the Soul King Palace for over 1,000,000 years. And I'm sure he would look absolutely awful without the agelessness power, right? Now, back to the Soul King. So we talked about how the Soul King had his limbs removed. These dismembered limbs and parts of the Soul King still exist outside of the Royal Palace. Exist, or reincarnated into different souls, I guess is the correct way of putting this, and they are scattered throughout the 3 different realms. The right arm of the Soul King is called Mimihagi. Mimihagi governs stillness as it stops the growth and development of all things. Anything that tried to change or develop could be shut out completely by Mimihagi. Now, the right arm fused with a young boy who would later become the 13th Division Captain, Jushiro Ukitake. When he was just 3 years old, Ukitake developed a lung disease. A disease so bad that all the doctors in the surrounding area gave up and abandoned the young boy as the illness was untreatable. Ukitake's parents took their young sick son to the shrine of Mimihage and prayed that it would take Ukitake's lungs away, to which it did, and this led Mimihage to fuse with Ukitake so that he could survive and later become a Shinigami. The left arm of the Soul King was the counterpart of the right arm, which where Mimihage could halt change and growth, the left arm, Panida, governs progression and advancement. The left hand went on to become one of Yhwach-Bar's Sternritters and one of the Schutzstaffel, who are Yhwach's elite guard within the Sternritter army. Now, the heart of the Soul King went to another of Yhwach-Bar's Sternritter and, again, Schutzstaffel. That was none other than Gerard Valkyrie. Its ability is called the Miracle. His ability allows him to turn the tide of battle in his favor through probability manipulation. The heart of the Soul King manifests miracles through the feelings and desires of the user. So, if Gerard is in a battle where the odds are strongly stacked against him, the miracle allows him to succeed regardless of how bad the situation is. Now, fragments of the Soul King's soul had also ended up within the souls of some humans, which allowed them to become Fullbringers. Fullbringers are humans who are spiritually aware, who possess the ability to manipulate the souls that reside within all physical matter. I personally thought it was amazing to find out that this is how the Fullbringers came to be, and it adds more to their backgrounds and overall story. So, other fragments of the Soul King even went to people like one of Bleach's ultimate best girls in Rongiku. Yes, Bleach is so underrated when it comes to its abundance of best girls, man. Anyway, her fragment was stolen by none other than Aizen, who would feed said fragment to his Hogyoku. So, with that knowledge on just what parts of the Soul King can do in terms of their powers and abilities, it's clearly obvious that the Soul King is the most powerful entity in the Bleach universe. Just imagine for a second how strong this guy was when his body was whole. So it's safe to say that the Soul King, a once transcendent being that protected the world from hollows and maintained a huge lack of balance that was well and truly needed, was the originator of the Shinigami, the Quincy, and the Fullbringers. A man that gave up his own life to use his powers for good, only to be thanked for his efforts by suffering an unthinkable and tragic fate at the hands of the ancestors of the 5 great noble families. This fate of his led to stabilization in the world and also to reincarnation. The Soul King was originally born into the world as a sort of blessing to make the world a better place, but the greed of the 5 noble ancestors and Ichigo led them to act out on their own in order to create an even better world in their own eyes. This huge information about the Soul King's backstory and nature really does expand on the lore of the Bleach universe and also allows us to understand the motives of the 2 big bads in a much more understandable way. Aizen, for example, wanted the throne of the Soul King for himself, deeming the Soul King's lifeless status as an empty throne, whereas the Soul King's son, Yhwach-Bar, wanted to kill his dear father to put an end to the current cycle of life where there would be no fear of death. These 2 motives intertwine, as both of these great antagonists basically couldn't accept the Soul King as the linchpin that holds the balance of the world together. For me, it's absolutely crazy that this wasn't included in the manga, but in a spin-off light novel. Knowing this information makes you understand what Aizen and Yhwach-Bar were really after, and their stories as villains make for a much more compelling one, but, that may just be me. So, the big question on your lips, I understand, how does Ichigo fit into all of this? Well, let's talk about the fate of the Soul King in the 1000-year Blood War arc. Yhwach-Bar arrives at the Soul King Palace, slaying many of the Soul King's vassals before entering the chamber of the Soul King himself, stabbing his father straight through the chest with his sword. None other than Ichigo arrives, of course, where Yhwach-Bar tells them of the Soul King situation and also tells them that they are too late to do anything about it. Ichigo's nature to help and protect kicks in, and he tries to help the Soul King by pulling out the sword. However, his Quincy ability Blood Vein kicks in, which forces Ichigo to slash the Soul King clean in half with Yhwach-Bar's sword, completely against his own will. The reason that this activated and took over Ichigo's movements completely was explained by Yhwach-Bar in that it was because of Ichigo's Quincy blood. The blood of the Quincy that flows through him could not tolerate the existence of the Soul King, which led to it reacting on its own to take the Soul King down and causing its death. Now, what would happen if the Soul King were to no longer exist? Well, the world would begin to collapse on itself and the balance of these 3 worlds or realms would be lost forever, but Ichigo had already conceived a plan if the unlikely event of the Soul King's death were to occur. Again, in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novel, Ichigo reveals that both he and Shunsui had planned that in the circumstance of the Soul King's death, he would be replaced by none other than Ichigo Kurosaki. Why was Ichigo the prime candidate to replace and be sacrificed to suffer the same horrible, never-ending fate of the Soul King so that balance between the three realms would remain secured? Well, it was simply because of his mixed heritage. Ichigo is not only insanely strong himself in terms of his spiritual power, but he also has the powers of the Soul Reapers, the Quincy, and the Hollows. He has always stood out amongst the crowd, not because he is the shonen protagonist and boasts a lot of power, but because of what is arguably Ichigo's strongest power, which has and always will be his insane potential. I believe it is also within Ichigo's own nature that makes him the best candidate to be the next Soul King. Ichigo's own drive and passion to get stronger has always been for the same singular goal: to protect. Even if Ichigo was told of his fate, that lifeless existence trapped for all eternity, being neither dead nor alive, simply existing for millions of years locked up in a crystal in a never-ending tormenting state of limbo just so that the world could be saved, I think he would honestly take that. It's within his own nature and personality, which again is another of Ichigo's core strengths. I think even if you show Ichigo both sides, showing him what he would be giving up so that the world remains protected and in balance, that he would take that responsibility and sacrifice himself so that the world, and more importantly to Ichigo, his friends, would be saved. So with this plan in motion, Ichigo is trained by the Zero Division during the 1,000-year Blood War arc, while Shunsui travels to the world of the living to tell Ichigo's friends that he may never come back from the Soul Society due to him being, too powerful to exist in the world of the living. In Shunsui's actual words, it was a 1 in a million chance that Ichigo would return, but I believe Shunsui's words at this time were a lie to give Ichigo's friends, comfort. I think Shunsui knew that Ichigo was never to return and that his training with the Zero Division was to prepare Ichigo for the fact that he would indeed become the next Soul King. And that's all thanks to the information we got from the light novel again. However, something happened that threw Ichigo's plan out, in turn saving Ichigo from what would have been a fate worse than we could ever have possibly imagined for our protagonist. So, we are back to the events in the Soul King's palace, where Ichigo had just sliced the Soul King clean in half. Without the presence of the one keeping the world in balance, chaos began to ensue on the world as it began to collapse. However, Ukitake took it upon himself to sacrifice his own life to bring back balance. Using Mimihage, Ukitake sacrificed himself so that it could stabilize the Soul King, saving his life at the cost of his own. In doing this, a large black hand bursts out of Ukitake, traveling straight towards the Soul King at his palace, where it grabs the upper part of its body. Yuha attempts to destroy both Mimihage and the Soul King, but is stopped by Ichigo, which buys Yoruichi enough time to set up a multiple sealed Kido barrier around the Soul King. She says that Mimihage has only stabilized the Soul King and that he would have to be replaced, which very well could have been Ichigo because of Ichigo's plan. However, Yoruichi is shot in the shoulder by Uryu Ishida, which causes her to lose concentration on her Kido barrier, causing it to shatter. This sends the top half of the Soul King flying towards Yuha, who rips Mimihage off of his father, absorbing both Mimihage and the Soul King. In doing this, Yuha has become the new Soul King and the new linchpin of the world. And because Ichigo manages to defeat Yuha, it is now Yuha, not Ichigo, whose remains are used as the new Soul King, sparing Ichigo from the fate that comes with the title. Absolutely crazy how close we got to having Ichigo end up as the new Soul King. How would you guys have felt about that? The thought that the knowledge we have of his happy future with his wife Orihime and their child together could have been nothing more than a thought passing through the lifeless mind of Ichigo as he wanders about the what-ifs in his sacrificed state? Bro, that just makes me feel weird, Definitely let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on Ichigo as the new Soul King. What you think about the Soul King himself, and also the knowledge we got on the Soul King from the light novel, making the motivations of both Aizen and Yuha Ba seemingly much more clearer to us. Very intrigued to get your input on these matters. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more Bleach videos on the channel, make sure to let us know by smashing that like button. If you haven't, make this the video you subscribe and hit the notification bell to turn on all notifications, or you will miss future Anime Uproar videos. While you wait for the next Bleach video to drop on the channel, make sure to check out this hour-long video explaining all of Ichigo Kurosaki's powers and abilities. Thanks again for watching, and we really can't wait to see you in the next one. Till next time, you take care of yourselves. Peace, peace.